Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're looking at 10 unusual things that guitarists believe that are actually true. Here we go, let's jump in. Number one is noiseless pickups. This one's pretty interesting. Now I think the vast majority of guitarists would definitely recommend using traditional single coils, with very few recommending noiseless pickups. And they kind of have a bad reputation, like, oh okay, get noiseless pickups, but only if you need them. You know, they don't sound very good. And where does this come from, and is it true? And I think absolutely the uncommon view, or the unpopular view, is actually correct, and that's noiseless pickups are fantastic. Now, why do they have a bad reputation amongst guitarists? Well, I think it largely comes down to Fender marketing. Every time Fender, releases a new gen of noiseless pickups, I think they're on Gen 4 or maybe even Gen 5 right now, the marketing's always the same. Great vintage tone without the noise, or authentic tone without the noise, or 50s, 60s tone without the noise. And I think that's maybe the wrong way to go about it, because people can buy these guitars and play them back to back and realize, well, they don't sound the same. And for me, that's okay. They don't need to be something they're not. And I've played on everything from EMGs, DiMarzios, Lace Sensors, Fender of course, Seymour Duncan, probably some others. And every time the noiseless pickups have been fantastic. Are they the same? No. Should they be marketed as the same? No, they're their own thing. So I don't think people should kind of crap on noiseless pickups just because they're not low output, super chimey vintage 50s, 60s pickups. They're their own thing and they sound great. Don't be afraid to buy them. All right, number two for unusual or unpopular opinions. This one is really tough. Amps are more important than guitars. This one hits me right here because I love my guitars, but I think actually it's true. A great amp is the ultimate equalizer. It'll make your budget guitar sound fantastic. Your super high-end guitar will sound killer. But if you do the same thing and put it through a cheap amp, well, it's gonna make your cheap guitar sound bad, your mid-range guitar sound bad, and your high-end guitar sound bad. But if you spend money on a great amp, like I said, your Squier, your Epiphone, whatever, will sound absolutely amazing through a high-end amp. So, if I take the emotions out of it, I think that actually is true. I know it's very unpopular, or it's in the minority, but I think that opinion is actually correct, having played a bunch of budget guitars. So if you have, your $1,000 budget or $1,500 budget, make sure you leave some for a good amp. And I think nowadays you can get an excellent playing experience out of mid-range guitars from $500 to $800, $1,000, $1,200. You don't have to spend, $2,000 or $4,000 on a guitar to get good tone. Spend some money on an amp. It'll make all your guitars sound great. Number three is another hot topic for sure. It's country of origin. This one always sparks lively debate, but I think the popular opinion, or the prevailing wisdom, is avoid things made overseas if at all possible. Buy locally, buy North American, buy European, or wherever you are. But if you can, avoid overseas. And I think the unpopular or the uncommon thing that I think is actually true is, by and large, things have been equalized across the board, especially when you're talking about, countries like Japan and South Korea. In my opinion, those guitars are just as good as the American-made ones. And of course, when we're talking about amps like we just were, well, Fender, Vox, Marshall, etc., they're all made in China anyway. So when, all these major manufacturers set up, factories overseas, well, it's going to be pretty hard to avoid that anyway, unless your budget is like sky high. So I think the reputation and the quality and the durability has largely been equalized. And I think if you're talking about, even custom shops like Wong's making amps, or Eastman making guitars, super high quality stuff. And, everything else in the mid-range is pretty much comparable. And every major brand has a mid-range, like, your PRS SE, like your Epiphone, like your Squier. They're all made overseas and they all have really good reputations. So I think, don't be scared to go overseas. And in many ways, it's unavoidable anyway, because all our favorite brands are making stuff there anyway. So there's high quality stuff coming out of there. Don't be afraid. All right, number four is Strat versus Tele. Another great debate as well. Of course, we know nothing can top the original electric guitar. The Tele stands alone on the mountaintop, untouched by everything. It's not even a debate. But anyway, here we go. Stratocasters, position 4, iconic tone. Nothing can beat that Strat quack. Well, I'm here to say position 2 on the Tele is even better. All right, well, enough praise for the Telecaster. Here's number 5. We're talking about 4x12 versus small combo amp. Now, when I was growing up, anybody who was gigging needed the 4x12 and the 100-watt head. Show up to the gig and you were legit. If you showed up with a small combo amp, didn't matter how good you were. It was like, oh, that's not too cool, man. You should upgrade your gear. And I think now that is changing a little bit, but I think in a lot of ways the unpopular or the unconventional view back then was, you know, the combo amp can do it all. Put a mic in front of it and you can play a stadium. You don't need the big stacks. I mean, the big stacks look cool, but man, they're heavy, they're awkward, and unless you're playing like massive venues, the sound guy's gonna make you turn that 100-watter down to a whisper anyway, which takes the fun out of it. And of course, as I mentioned, there's full digital options, there's hybrid options, you know, like the Torpedo, you can run your 100-watt heads into that and go straight to a PA system or to your computer and still get all your great tube amp tone. So there's all different options. So I don't think it's as contentious to pick something other than the stack anymore. But certainly, yeah, it used to be that was legit and anything else was, you know, unusual or uncommon. But I think that actually is much more flexible and, you know, the better option. All right, moving on to number 6 for unusual or unpopular beliefs that are actually true. We're talking tonewood. Darrell, why would you bring up tonewood? It's so divisive. Yes, but it's fun to talk about. So on one camp, you've got, you know, tonewood is real. Pick your woods carefully. It's going to affect your tone forever. You know, on the other side, it's like it can't be proven by science. On an electric instrument, it's impossible for wood to, you know, affect the audio spectrum. Well, I think the best video for this was done by Warmouth. They did a great job showing how different woods actually affect the audio spectrum. My opinion on the whole thing is, yes, tonewood is real, but it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. If you take your tone control on your guitar and move it, if you take your picking hand and move it towards the bridge or the neck, or if you adjust your amp, all of that stuff doesn't matter anyway. So yes, tonewood is real. Does it matter? Absolutely not. All right, well, we best move on to number 7. This is a good one as well. We're talking about changing the tone of your guitar and amp. Now, I think probably 90% of people would think about swapping pickups, and it makes a massive difference. Different magnets, different frequency response, different output levels, all affects the tone of your guitar and your amp. Now, I think probably an unpopular view or an unusual view would be, well, change the speaker in your amp. That makes, honestly, a way bigger difference. Changing the speaker type in your amp is just massive. And unless you're going from like a super low output, like vintage set, to like an ultra high gain metal set, that might make a massive difference to your tone as well. But if you're just kind of tweaking colors of, you know, pickups or whatever, slightly different flavors of pickups, man, try changing the speaker in your amp. It makes a massive difference. All right, moving on to number 8, we're talking about buying a guitar. Now, I think when most people go to buy a guitar, they think, well, I want the Strat sound or the Les Paul sound or a 335 or an Ibanez or, you know, something modern, something traditional. They sort of have that in their head. And I think the less popular or the unusual option is pick a guitar for feel. Because not everybody who wants the Les Paul tone wants the Les Paul feel. And if you just go buy one, then you play it for a bit and you're like, oh, this is awkward and clunky and the neck profile's too thick, but I like the tone. Well, get something that feels a little bit better. There's, you know, a bevy of single cut options out there with different neck profiles. So in my opinion, you know, that I don't think a lot of people think about is think about the ergonomics, think about the balance, think about the neck profile, satin finish versus gloss finish, all of those playability things, fret sizes, right? So, you know, you can definitely go into buying with like, I want the Strat style, I want, you know, the Les Paul style, I want the Ibanez style, but try a bunch of things out. You know, if you like that smooth Ibanez tone, but you can't handle that paper thin neck, well, look for something with similar pickups or similar outputs in a different style neck. Again, all of these different guitar styles come in different flavors. So pick for ergonomics, pick for weight, pick for playability. I think long-term, you're gonna end up with a better guitar. Next, for number 9, we're talking about digital versus tube. Now, when I was growing up, everybody said avoid digital. Go tube or go analog if you're talking about pedals. just don't use the digital stuff. It's lifeless, it's sterile, it sounds fake. You know, you can't convey any emotion through a digital unit or whatever. And I don't think any of that was true, but certainly like the common knowledge was, or the common prevailing wisdom again, was go analog, go tube if you want good tone. And I mean, I grew up with like the earliest Zoom pedals, and okay, to be honest, some of the patches weren't great, but that changed very, very quickly. And I think the new, generations of guitarists picking up the hobby, none of that really matters for them because they grew up with digital. And like I said, it changed so quickly. And nowadays, I think people still would probably recommend a tube or, analog, but I think the unpopular or, the unusual opinion is, digital is just as good. I don't think anybody can tell the difference anymore. That's just the fact. Maybe you can feel the difference, or you can feel like the heat coming off your amp or this or that, or you can feel the air move by the speaker. All of that stuff is very, very emotional and very, kind of a tactile function of that. But when you plug it into a studio or at your computer or whatever, none of that matters anymore. The tone is, like I said, indistinguishable. Digital is great, don't fear it. And finally, for number 10, let's talk relics. Yeah, this is a good one too. When they first came out, pretty much the whole guitar world said, this is stupid. They're expensive, it's fake wear, it's unauthentic, everything about it is just fake and phony. And of course, Fender started by doing their custom shop models, so they were horribly expensive. But there was a small group of people that said, relics are cool. I think it gives a good vibe. Who cares if it's fake? Just play it and enjoy it. I was not part of that group, so I can't take credit for it. But that unpopular opinion was absolutely right, as we've seen relics pretty much take over the world. Now, the original series, the Mexican series, you can get relics on all of them. I don't know if you can get Squire's relic, maybe you can, but certainly you can get very, very cheap guitar kits with relicing on it. You can buy bodies with relicing. It's become incredibly, incredibly popular, whether you like it or not. So I think, the prevailing wisdom is relics are pretty stupid and pretty fake and pretty lame. But the people at the beginning that said relics are cool, well, you were proven true. It was unpopular, but now they've taken over the guitar world and nobody really blinks at them anymore. So anyway, that's just a fun one. So if you liked relics from the beginning, good for you. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the channel. You can check out the t-shirt, tab store, gear I use. All that stuff is down in the video description below. You can check it out there. Other than that, have yourself a great day. Take care.